The tech world is currently obsessed with a single number, 5. Everyone is waiting, eyes glued to the digital horizon for the arrival of GPT-5. The prevailing narrative suggests that OpenAI is locked in a desperate arms race to achieve the highest possible IQ for a language model. We expect a sudden jump in logic, a breakthrough in reasoning that finally bridges the gap between machine and human cognition. But while the public waits for a smarter brain, Sam Altman and his team are quietly busy building a more efficient body. They have realized that intelligence alone is not the final product. The real revolution isn't just a higher IQ. It is a complete and total transformation of the user interface. We are witnessing the birth of the AI super app, a shift that changes the very nature of how we interact with technology on a daily basis. OpenAI is no longer content being just a chatbot you visit for a quick answer or a creative writing prompt. Recent updates, specifically the rollout of ChatGPT Images 2.0, signal a massive strategic pivot. They are moving away from the model-as-a-service trap, where they simply provide raw power to other developers, and moving toward becoming the primary operating system for the AI age. Imagine an ecosystem where image generation, deep reasoning, sophisticated coding, and real-time web browsing aren't separate browser tabs or different mobile apps, but a singular, fluid environment. This is the end game. Sam Altman's team is consolidating these fragmented capabilities into a unified architecture that feels intuitive. In the past, we accepted a fractured digital life. We used Midjourney for art, Claude for writing, and Perplexity for search. This created what experts call a friction tax, the hidden cost of moving data and context between different platforms. OpenAI is aiming to eliminate that tax entirely. By integrating every necessary tool into one interface, they are positioning ChatGPT as the everything app for the global professional world. The model itself, however impressive, is just the engine under the hood. The super app is the vehicle that actually takes you where you need to go. If you focus only on the engine, you miss the entire design of the car. Everyone is waiting for GPT-5 to change the world with its logic, but they're missing the fact that the platform itself is already evolving into something much more comprehensive and dangerous for competitors. We are moving toward a reality where the interface anticipates your next move, suggests visual aids for your text, and writes code to support your ideas, all within a single conversation window. This is the strategy that will allow OpenAI to compete with giants like Google Gemini and Apple Intelligence. They aren't just building a tool, they are building the environment where all human work happens. This is about establishing a dominant moat. When your research, your creation, and your final output all happen within one digital wall, the convenience becomes a gravity well that is impossible for users to escape. ChatGPT Images 2.0 is the latest evidence of this strategy. It isn't just about making prettier pictures or higher resolution assets. It's about making images that understand the logic of your entire project. It represents a move toward multimodal integration, where the AI can think about the spatial reasoning of a design before the first pixel is even placed. This integration of reasoning and creation is what sets the super app apart from a simple collection of features. It represents a fundamental change in the platform itself. Sam Altman's team is moving with incredible speed to ensure that when GPT-5 does eventually arrive, it doesn't just enter a vacuum. It will enter a fully formed ecosystem that is ready to apply that intelligence to every aspect of human productivity instantly. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The era of jumping between 5 different tabs just to get one task done is ending. We are entering a period where the barrier between thought and execution is being dissolved by a single, powerful interface. OpenAI's vision is to become the invisible layer through which we view and interact with the digital world, turning the complexity of AI into a seamless extension of our own creative intent. They are shifting the focus from the intelligence of the machine to the capability of the user, ensuring that ChatGPT is the only tool you ever need to open when you start your workday. This consolidation is a direct challenge to the specialized tools that have dominated the market, forcing a consolidation of the entire AI industry into a single, unified experience managed by one company. The platform is becoming the product, and that product is an all-encompassing environment for the future. To understand where the industry is heading, we must first look back at the chaotic fragmentation that defined the AI landscape between late 2022 and early 2024. In those years, the novelty of generative artificial intelligence was so high that users willingly tolerated a broken workflow. If you were a creator or developer, your daily routine was a frantic exercise in tab hopping. You would find yourself in a constant loop, bouncing between different platforms to complete a single task. You might go to Claude for its literary style, then jump to Midjourney to generate an image that matched the mood. If you needed to verify facts, you opened Perplexity, and for code, you turned to Cursor. Each tool was exceptional, but they existed as isolated silos. They didn't share your history or understand your overarching goals. This fragmentation imposed a heavy friction tax on every user. Every time you moved data from one interface to another, you paid this tax in lost time and diminished context. You had to re-explain your vision to a new model every few minutes, hoping the next AI would understand established nuances. You had to copy, paste, and adjust prompts to fit the specific technical quirks of each engine. This wasn't merely a minor inconvenience. It was a cognitive drain that prevented the deep flow state required for high-level work. OpenAI recognized this friction as the primary barrier to mass adoption. They realized that the ultimate winner wouldn't necessarily be the company with the highest IQ model, but the one that offered the most seamless path of least resistance for the end user. The evolution of ChatGPT has been a direct response to this realization. Initially, DALL-E was a separate entity, a standalone tool that felt more like an experiment. However, Sam Altman and his team soon began stitching these disparate capabilities into a cohesive whole. We saw the first signal of this pivot when DALL-E 3 was integrated directly into the chat interface, allowing the chatbot to finally see and draw. It was no longer a text-restricted experience. This was the start of their multimodal first approach. OpenAI wasn't just adding features. They were training their systems to understand that human thought is inherently multimodal. We do not think in isolated blocks of text, images, or logic. We think in a mixture of all three, and the super app mirrors that natural process. To grasp this scale, consider the historical precedent set by Microsoft Office. Before the Office suite became the global standard, corporations relied on a patchwork of incompatible programs for spreadsheets, text, and presentations. Microsoft's stroke of strategic genius wasn't just developing a better spreadsheet. It was creating an interconnected ecosystem where data flowed effortlessly between Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. They built a dominant suite that competitors found impossible to disrupt because the switching cost became prohibitively high. OpenAI is executing this exact playbook for the generative AI era. They are building a unified workspace where the transition from research to visual prototype and then to functional code happens without the user ever needing to click outside of their digital walls. This is how they build their most effective competitive moat. This transition represents a fundamental strategic shift away from specific tasks and toward universal workflows. While most competitors are still preoccupied with building a better hammer, OpenAI is focused on building the entire automated workshop. They are no longer interested in being a niche tool. They want to be the environment where all digital work originates and concludes. By consolidating these functions, they are creating a powerful gravity well. Once a project begins within the ChatGPT ecosystem, the convenience of staying within that unified interface outweighs the benefit of using a specialized tool elsewhere. This is how a simple chatbot becomes a comprehensive operating system. This is how Sam Altman ensures OpenAI remains at the center of the digital economy, shifting from providing a raw service to providing the space where the future of human creativity is constructed. The real proof of this strategic ambition lies within the technical architecture of ChatGPT Images 2.0. This update is not merely an incremental improvement in pixel density or color accuracy. It represents a fundamental redesign of how artificial intelligence perceives and generates visual space. At its core, the new model introduces a revolutionary concept that Sam Altman's team refers to as reasoning before drawing. In previous iterations of generative tools, the AI would essentially guess the placement of objects based on statistical probability, often resulting in the surreal and frustrating errors that became synonymous with early AI art. Extra fingers, floating limbs, or garbled text that looked more like ancient runes than English. With Images 2.0, the system engages in a dedicated processing phase where it maps out the spatial logic of the request before a single pixel is rendered. This means the model understands that if a character is holding a cup, the fingers must wrap around the cylinder in a physically plausible way. It understands the structural integrity of the world it is about to create before it begins the artistic process. This thinking phase is not just a superficial check. It is a deep dive into the latent space of the model to ensure that every element of the composition respects the laws of physics and perspective. Utilizing GPT Image 2's multimodal integration, the system can now treat text not just as a visual pattern, but as semantic data that must be represented accurately and legibly within the composition. This results in a level of spatial reasoning that feels almost architectural. If a user asks for a complex interior scene with multiple light sources and reflections, the model now understands the physics of how light should bounce off a glass table or how a shadow should stretch across a wooden floor. This reduces the AI hallucinations in visual details that previously ruined professional-grade assets, allowing ChatGPT to produce images that are not just pretty, but structurally sound. Complementing this cognitive leap is the move to native 2K resolution. While the numbers themselves are impressive, the implication for professional workflows is even more significant. Higher resolution allows for a level of detail that was previously the exclusive domain of specialized platforms like Midjourney. By bringing this quality into the ChatGPT interface, OpenAI is eliminating the quality gap that forced high-end creators to look elsewhere. The images are no longer just concepts or sketches, they are production-ready assets. This clarity is a direct result of the GPT Image 2 architecture, which allows for finer control over the diffusion process, ensuring that textures look realistic and edges remain sharp even at large scales. Perhaps the most transformative feature within this update is the introduction of multi-image consistency. In the fragmented era, maintaining the same character or aesthetic across a series of images required complex external tools, custom seeds, or incredibly specific prompt engineering that rarely worked perfectly. OpenAI has solved this by allowing the model to remember the visual identity of a subject across a conversation. Whether you are creating a storyboard for a film, a series of illustrations for a children's book, or a consistent visual identity for a brand, the super app now maintains a cohesive thread throughout the entire project. This is where workflow cohesion becomes a reality. The user is no longer fighting against the randomness of the machine. They are directing a persistent digital reality where a character can walk from one scene into another without losing their identifiable features. The interface itself, known as Canvas, is the stage where this technical ballet takes place. Canvas represents the UI/UX revolution necessary for a true super app. It transforms the interaction from a linear conversation into a collaborative workspace. Within this window, users can highlight specific sections of an image or a block of code, and ask for real-time modifications. You can tell the AI to change the lighting on a character's face or rewrite a specific function in a script without the system regenerating the entire output. This granular control mimics the way humans actually work, iteratively and precisely. It removes the start-from-scratch penalty that plagued earlier AI interactions. This synergy between GPT Image 2 and the Canvas interface illustrates that OpenAI is no longer content with being a provider of cool features. They are building a tool that understands the context of your entire project, ensuring that your visual assets, your research and your code all exist in a single unified environment where creativity can flourish without technical interruption. The architecture of this emerging super app is built on a foundation of anticipatory logic. It is no longer enough for an interface to simply respond to a prompt. It must now anticipate the next logical step in a user's professional journey. If you are drafting a complex software architecture within the chat window, the system shouldn't wait for you to ask for a visual diagram. It should recognize the structural requirements of your code and offer to generate a high-resolution UI mockup or a flowchart immediately. This is the hallmark of the super app, a seamless transition between disparate modes of creation. It bridges the gap between text-based reasoning and visual manifestation, creating a cognitive environment where the user's intent flows unimpeded. By integrating these capabilities into a single, cohesive framework, OpenAI is constructing a digital nervous system that handles the logistical heavy lifting, allowing the human creator to focus exclusively on high-level decision-making. The endgame of this architectural shift is far more ambitious than merely dominating the AI market. It is a direct challenge to the dominance of the traditional web browser and the desktop operating system. For decades, the primary way humans interacted with computers was through a series of fragmented applications and tabs. We searched in one place, wrote in another, and designed in a third. OpenAI's vision effectively collapses these walls. In this new paradigm, ChatGPT becomes the primary portal to the digital world, an everything app that functions as a sophisticated filter and executor. When the interface can search the web, write code, generate production-ready imagery, and analyze complex datasets simultaneously, the need to navigate away to a traditional search engine or a standalone design suite begins to evaporate. The interface is no longer a destination, it is the infrastructure. By removing the friction between these tasks, OpenAI is redefining the relationship between the user and the computer. Under the strategic guidance of Sam Altman, this consolidation strategy is a calculated countermove against the massive ecosystems of Google and Apple. While Google attempts to weave Gemini into its existing suite of productivity tools, and Apple integrates Apple Intelligence directly into the hardware of its devices, OpenAI is betting on a platform-agnostic super app that can live anywhere while providing superior specialized capabilities. Unlike Google's approach, which often feels like an extension of legacy software, OpenAI's super app is built from the ground up around the model's reasoning abilities. This gives them a distinct advantage in agility. They are not trying to fix an old browser. They are building a new way to experience the internet entirely. By positioning ChatGPT as the central node of productivity, they are making it increasingly difficult for users to justify returning to the siloed experiences offered by competitors who are still trying to figure out how to integrate AI without disrupting their core advertising or hardware businesses. The strategic moat OpenAI is digging is made of data and habit. By keeping users inside a single interface for every stage of a project, from the initial research phase to the final deployment, OpenAI creates a massive, self-reinforcing data loop. This loop allows the model to become increasingly personalized, understanding not just the general context of a query, but the specific stylistic preferences, coding standards, and project goals of the individual user. This level of intimacy creates a switching cost that is nearly impossible for competitors to overcome. Moving to another platform would mean losing the institutional memory the super app has built regarding your specific workflow. This is the process of strategic stacking, taking a single feature, like a better image generator, and stacking it onto a multimodal capability, which then feeds into a broader strategy of user retention, ultimately resulting in the implication that OpenAI is the sole gatekeeper of the AI-driven economy. They are evolving from a service provider into the very environment that modern digital creators inhabit, where every tool is a specialized limb of a single powerful digital mind. The path toward total consolidation is rarely a straight line. While the vision of a singular, all-encompassing super app is compelling, it faces a fundamental tension: the battle between generalist utility and specialist mastery. This is the first major hurdle for OpenAI under the strategic guidance of Sam Altman. Can one interface truly serve the high-level needs of every professional niche? History is littered with everything apps that eventually collapsed under the weight of their own complexity. When a tool tries to be everything to everyone, it risks becoming mediocre at everything. For the elite digital artist who spends hours perfecting the lighting in Midjourney, or the software engineer who relies on the deep, integrated intelligence of Cursor, a generalist chat interface might feel like a compromise. The question isn't just whether the super app can generate an image or write a line of code, but whether it can do so with the nuance and depth required for professional-grade output. The competition isn't just standing still. Specialized AI tools have a distinct advantage: focus. Midjourney has spent years refining the aesthetic quality of its latent space, creating a specific look that many artists find indispensable. Cursor has integrated AI so deeply into the coding environment that it anticipates every keystroke in a way a chat window struggles to match. These niche players are the antibodies of the super app ecosystem. They represent a resistance to the one-size-fits-all philosophy. If OpenAI cannot match the peak performance of these specialized tools, the super app may remain a tool for generalists and beginners, while the high-end market remains fragmented. This creates a split in the industry: a good enough layer controlled by OpenAI, and a pro layer where specialized agents still reign supreme. This fragmentation is exactly what the antagonist competitive ecosystem, including Google and Apple, hopes to exploit by offering more modular solutions. Beyond the technical performance lies a massive regulatory and ethical minefield. The rollout of ChatGPT Images, 2.0, brings the thorny issue of copyright back to the forefront. As OpenAI pushes further into high-resolution, consistent visual generation, the pressure from the creative industry intensifies. The legal battles over training data are not just background noise, they are existential threats. If courts decide that the ingestion of copyrighted material for model training requires massive licensing fees, the economic model of the super app could be upended. Furthermore, as OpenAI consolidates more power, it attracts the scrutiny of antitrust regulators. The transition from a useful tool to a dominant platform is the exact moment when governments typically step in to prevent monopolistic behavior. The goal of being the operating system for the AI age carries the heavy burden of being treated like a public utility, subject to oversight that could slow down innovation. Then, there is the internal risk of the all-in-one trap. We have seen this cycle before with platforms like Facebook or Microsoft Windows. They start as clean, efficient solutions to specific problems and gradually transform into bloated ecosystems filled with features that most users never use. If the ChatGPT interface becomes cluttered with too many buttons, menus, and modes, it risks losing the very simplicity that made it a global phenomenon. Maintaining a low-friction user experience while adding infinite capability is one of the hardest design challenges in tech. If the Canvas interface becomes as complex as Adobe Photoshop or a full IDE, the average user might find it intimidating, driving them back to simpler, more focused alternatives like Claude or Perplexity for specific tasks. Finally, the super app strategy relies on a level of data collection that is unprecedented. For the AI to act as a project coordinator, it must know everything. It needs to see your code, read your research, and understand your brand's visual identity. This creates a user privacy paradox. The more the super app knows, the more helpful it becomes, but the more power OpenAI holds over the user's intellectual property and personal habits. In an era where data sovereignty is becoming a major concern for both individuals and corporations, the idea of handing the keys to an entire professional workflow to a single entity is a hard pill to swallow. The trust gap is real. If users feel their data is being used to train the next iteration of the model that might eventually replace them, the very data loop OpenAI relies on could be severed by a push toward local, private AI models. This tension is not just a side effect of growth. It is the central conflict of the next era. As OpenAI maneuvers through these obstacles, the stakes involve more than just market share. They involve the definition of digital labor itself. By 2025, the typical workday has transformed into a seamless flow of intent rather than a series of disconnected chores. Imagine a Tuesday morning where a single entrepreneur wakes up with a conceptual spark for a new digital service. In the previous era, this person would have spent weeks hiring freelancers, toggling between research tabs, and wrestling with incompatible file formats. Now, they open the OpenAI Super App. Through a single vocal prompt, the AI begins coordinating a complex symphony of tasks. It pulls market data to validate the idea, generates a brand identity using the high-fidelity consistency of ChatGPT Images 2.0, and simultaneously opens a canvas window to draft the underlying code. The friction that once defined the digital experience has evaporated, replaced by a singular interface that anticipates the next logical step in the creative process. This is the ultimate realization of the company of one. In this futuristic decentralized workplace, the individual is no longer limited by their technical overhead. The super app acts as an invisible executive assistant, a lead designer, and a senior developer all at once. By consolidating every phase of production, from the initial brainstorming to final deployment, OpenAI has fundamentally altered the economics of creativity. The leverage provided by this unified ecosystem allows a solitary creator to produce at the scale of a mid-sized agency. This shift doesn't just represent an improvement in efficiency, it represents a total redistribution of productive power. The user no longer needs to be an expert in every tool. They only need to be an expert in articulating their vision. This transition validates Sam Altman's long-term strategy of moving beyond simple chat interactions to provide a comprehensive operating system for human ambition. However, this empowerment brings a significant debate regarding displacement. As the super app absorbs the functions of specialized tools and human roles, the line between augmentation and replacement becomes thinner. While the competitive ecosystem led by Google Gemini and Apple Intelligence tries to keep users within their respective walled gardens, OpenAI's focus on a fluid, multimodal workflow creates a different kind of gravity. The risk of displacement is real for those whose value was tied to navigating the friction tax of the old world. Yet for the creator, the super app offers a defensive moat. It allows them to stay agile, pivoting between industries and ideas without the baggage of traditional infrastructure. The technology is not just replacing tasks. It is redefining the human role as the ultimate curator of quality and the final arbiter of taste. In this final synthesis, it becomes clear that OpenAI isn't just winning the AI race, they have effectively moved the finish line. While the world was watching the leaderboard for the highest benchmark scores, Altman's team was building the vehicle that would make those scores relevant to the average person. The model was never the destination. The super app is. By integrating reasoning, vision, and execution into one cohesive environment, OpenAI has solved the fragmentation problem that plagued the early 2020s. They have moved from providing a smarter search engine to providing a universal logic layer that sits beneath every action we take online. This strategic pivot ensures that ChatGPT is no longer a destination you visit, but the atmosphere you breathe while working. The practical takeaway for any observer is a shift in mindset. To thrive in this new landscape, one must stop treating ChatGPT as a search engine or a simple ghostwriter. It must be approached as a project coordinator. The true power of the 2.0 updates and the Canvas interface lies in their ability to maintain context over long, complex journeys. Users who continue to use AI for isolated prompts will find themselves lagging behind those who learn to manage the AI as a holistic system. The goal is to offload the cognitive load of how a task is done, so that the human mind can focus entirely on why it is being done in the first place. As we look toward the next arc of AI evolution, the emotional closure of this journey is one of profound possibility. We are entering an era where human creativity is the only remaining bottleneck. The technical barriers that once silenced great ideas are crumbling under the weight of multimodal integration. While the technology itself is incredibly complex, the result is a return to a simpler form of interaction between humans and machines. OpenAI has created a mirror for our intent, a tool that reflects our most ambitious goals and provides the means to reach them. The story of the AI super app is not a story about software. It is a story about the expansion of human potential. As the digital and physical worlds continue to blur, the finish line continues to move further out, inviting us to see just how far our imagination can take us when the tools finally keep pace with our thoughts. This is the beginning of the end for the old way of working and the start of a new, unified era of creation.